Good morning, everybody. I am Chris Haskell, and thanks for joining us here for this Zwift Women's Week broadcast of the Ride with our amazing friend Kristin Armstrong, and we are so glad to have her here today. Let me just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do, and then we're going to introduce her and get me out of the way. This is the highlight of Zwift Women's Week, and it's a special spin with three-time Olympic gold medalist Kristin Armstrong. She's the most decorated female cyclist in U.S. history. Actually, I don't know why we're even using that female in that. She's the most decorated cyclist in U.S. history. And we're hosting this on Facebook Live. So the call out to each of you is if you're watching and joining us on Facebook Live or you're in the ride group with us, please throw your questions in. I'll filter those and ask Kristin what you want to know. We're so glad that you're here with us. So I guess the first question, Kristin, is where the heck are you? Where are you riding from?
Well, I'm back home in Boise, Idaho, and so I'm actually riding. I have my downstairs floor set up as kind of my little indoor gym so that
Nice.
I stay comfortable.
Very cool. So many of us are actually on in our own home gyms as well, which is really cool. You don't have some big fancy studio. Do you occasionally have to move your bike out of the way to do other stuff like the rest of us?
No, actually, I do have it set up so that my bike is set up where it is. I married someone that's type AAA, and so if I were to even try to move it, he would notice.
He would notice. Excellent. Well, we've got a ton of people so far, well over 100 people joining us. We're about to roll out. Only 5 seconds to go, and then we're going to push at a pretty easy pace. We're going to stay with our ride leader, Kate Verino. You know Kate Verino from Zwift. She is fabulous. So she is our ride leader. Hopefully she'll keep it under control here, because doggone it, it's hard to ask questions when you're an old guy like me and keep some kind of decent breast support. But so we're hanging out with the group here. You're right here with us as well. So everybody's riding with Kristin. So we like to start these ride with a little bit of pressure. A little bit of pressure. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put you, Kristin, if you're okay with it, through the gauntlet. Okay, the gauntlet is a series of 10 questions that you have to answer in 1 minute. And if you can answer all of these questions correctly, well, they're your answers. So in 60 seconds, then this person gets a prize, and we are choosing Rachel Lang out of our group from Great Britain. Rachel Lang will get a fabulous prize. Are you ready for the gauntlet, Kristin? Okay, here we go.
That's kind of a little bit of pressure on me right now.
Yeah, no kidding. It's about to start. Here's your first question. How many days a week do you ride on average? How many days a week do you ride on average?
5.
Okay, how many, what's your longest ride ever? Longest ride ever?
140.
Okay, hardest ride ever? Favorite ride? Favorite ride? Okay, excellent. What was your first bike?
Track 800.
Okay, what is your favorite bike now?
Myself, that's one.
How many bikes do you own?
About 10.
Okay, and how many hours do you exercise a week? Shimano, SRAM, or camping? You did it! Nice job. Congratulations. Rachel Lang, you win a prize. We'll connect with you after the ride and on Facebook Live to make sure that you get that. Oh, Kristin, you did it. You survived the gauntlet. Congratulations. And,
Awesome.
Well done. So we've been fielding questions from a lot of our folks in advance. A lot of people are very excited to ride with you. I got to make sure I'm not going to get dropped off the group. Make sure I stay with Kate here. There you are with your verified check.
I sped up because I got nervous answering questions, and then, yeah. So sorry about that.
Well, no worries. Yeah, I mean, the questions will do that to you. So we've got to catch on the back here at Kate, or she's going to drop us and then make fun of us forever. So Tiffany Larson from Boise, Idaho, asked, what are some of the strategies that you've used to deal with nervousness before events. I mean, something we all deal with, right? I mean, the hardest part of a race, they say, is the 30 minutes before the gun goes off, right?
Yes.
Do you feel that way? I mean, is that a tough spot for you as well?
It used to be, and it still became quite difficult, but over the years, it became a lot more, I was a lot more at ease, and I would say there's two things. Number one, a little bit of nerves is good. A little bit of nerves is good because it means you care. It means you care inside about what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah.
And as far as the nerves that go overboard, those nerves can actually be detrimental to your performance that day. So what you have to do is, several days out from your competition, you have to tell yourself that nothing that you do physically from a week out is going to change the outcome. Unless you overdo it, unless you don't take proper rest. And so what I always tell myself is, game day is celebration day. You're celebrating the journey that brought you there. You've done all the hard work you can do. And if you want to show up and let the nerves get the best of you, you've just sacrificed at least 1% of your race to your competitor. And so if you can have confidence and believe in yourself and the training that led you up there, and just take care of your body. Get enough sleep, make sure you hydrate, and make sure that you fuel your body properly. Then those 48 hours when those nerves start really rushing through your body, you need to take a deep breath and say, I've done my homework. Now the stars have to be aligned, and I need a little luck on my side.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of it is self-talk.
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. I like my favorite part of that was that a week out you're not going to dramatically change the outcome except if you mess it up, if you overtrain, if you push too hard. I mean, you've done the work that you really just need to calm, just have some calm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so I want to ask you an obscure question, something maybe you haven't thought about in a while. You've obviously got quite a laundry list. Now, people watching on the stream are seeing one by one each of your big, I guess, wiki accomplishments, pop up on there, different stage wins, different event wins, Pan Am games and stuff like that. And so there are a lot of them there. But I want to ask you about a slightly more obscure one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
It was way back in the day. So 2003, you were in the Pan American Games, which is, it doesn't exist in its previous form anymore. It's gone, right? Pan Am Games are no more? Okay.
Oh, no. It's every 4 years.
Every 4 years. Okay, so it's still there. I just haven't seen much on it. We used to be able to watch it on TV.
No.
Yeah.
It all still falls always the year before the Olympic Games.
Okay. Yeah, so I imagine it's a great warm-up, still as it used to be, kind of for that. So you got a bronze medal in the women's time trial at the Pan Am Games. And this is not long after you decided to make the switch, really, from triathlon, which you've been pretty successful at, to cycling. So this is, I would guess, your first big podium finish. Can you maybe just describe the beginning of your career back then, those games, seeing success for the first time, being on the podium? How much do you remember about that?
Well, I remember it very, very clearly. In fact, I have a vision in my mind because I'm actually standing next to Clara Hughes and Kimberly Bruckner, which is now Kimberly Baldwin.
Right.
But those two women were people I looked up to. They're my idols because they were like the queen of time trialing.
Yeah.
And as a triathlete, going into the sport of cycling, you have nothing but wanting to dream of time trialing. Because when you rode in a pack, everything scared you. And so you wanted to do your best. And I would say at that moment, not only was I proud to stand next to those women, but I was super proud to be in a Team USA kit. And there's nothing better than representing your country. In fact, that's what continually brought me back to each of these Olympic Games, is just knowing that you're representing Team USA And listening to a national anthem on a podium is unbelievable.
Oh.
But it actually, at that moment, it gave me confidence to be on that podium knowing that I can actually do this. I can actually be successful at this. And so though there were many hard obstacles and there are many performances that I don't care to remember, there's just the little ones that have to happen every so often to give you that hope and promise.
So did you have a vision at that point when you were on that podium, either that you had a taste for finishes, like I deserve to be up here, or did you have an inkling at that point of what you would go on to do? I mean, what was your thought process?
Yeah, I had no idea what I would go on to do. I can tell you that. In fact, I remember after not doing well in the 2004 Olympic trials in the time trial, when Kristin won,
Yeah.
she came out and she beat every one of us on T-Mobile who were all supposed to be the favorites.
Right.
And so she had the most stellar performance. And after that day, I remember going to my coach and saying, what am I doing? You know, and here I am, I've only been in the sport for a year, and I'm telling them that I think I should quit because I'm not good enough. And so that day I was fifth in the time trial, you know, against all the Americans. And I am wired and driven that way to just believe that, you know, I want to get there and I want to get there fast. But, you know, what it also did was it made me super hungry
Right.
to want to actually get there. And though it took 4 years to get to Beijing, I made little goals in between, such as all the world championships that were in between there. So it was tough, but you know, like I said, all the little successes that you can have, you always have to remember those because those are what motivate you for the bigger successes that are to come.
That's really cool. So, Janice Denning, who is actually from Portland, Oregon, she submitted a question a few days ago on the Facebook group. She's a great cyclist, but she's also full-time working mom. She feels guilty dedicating time to cycling, and her question is, what are the strategies that you have discovered to make time for both in the way that you want to make time for both?
That's a great question. I get asked that question quite often.
Do you? Okay.
And I do. And I will tell you one thing. Mom guilt and dad guilt are never going to go away. But I've had plenty of it, and I've felt it. But what happens is, when I look back on the last 6 years of my son's life and my life, what I always tell myself is what he's repeating now and what the lessons that he has learned from watching me work really hard and then seeing success, he's now been taught that in order to do things in life, you have to work really hard and you have to practice really hard to get there. And I always believe that as a mom, when it's Lucas time, it is quality time.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is I try to make those times together super special and actually without distraction. So when we're out and we're doing something, going to the pool or going for a walk or going for a mountain bike ride, I always make sure that my cell phone is not the first thing that I pull out, because children just want a little bit of time each day of dedication without distraction. And in today's world, it's really hard for any of us to be completely 100% focused.
It's so true. You got to put phones away. You got to turn things off. It's deliberate. You can't focus that 100% attention unless you're, willing to let go of some things that you normally kind of stay connected to. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the quality time, and I also think, you bring your children in to your journey and you talk about it. There's nothing to hide, and there's nothing wrong with setting goals. Just because you're a mom doesn't mean that your world and your goals and your dreams have to stop.
Oh, I like that a lot. I hope Janice pulls that piece out, especially to include your family in your goals. To make them part of the goal. Then they can celebrate the goal with you. Yeah. That's a fabulous idea. So there's a question similar to that Siobhan Dolan asks, and I think that they're connected. So when you got your second gold medal, the rumor is you had said, "Oh, okay, I think I'm ready to, to do something different," but that maybe Lucas, your son, and the opportunity to maybe go back and have him be part of that experience was something that pushed you to go back. So Siobhan asks, what made you come back to Rio?
Well, to be honest with you, I think my son and the vision of having my son on the podium is what made me really want to come back to London. Now, for Rio, I will tell you this is interesting. As I look back and on that, when I was making the decision to come back, the simple answer to it is because I can. And every time I go out for a ride, it doesn't matter who I was with, I just want to drop them or half wheel them. So I knew that my competitiveness was still on fire inside of me. So outside of that, though, I started working a normal job, and I love my job. It's a dream job. I work for a hospital system in Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
But imagine having 2 gold medals and reaching the pinnacle of sport. One of the hardest things that I faced, and I still face today, is what's next. So
right.
I have a dream job. But what's that goal within my job that's going to even be on par with what I've accomplished in the past 8 years?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to feel, my old boss called it stretch. And when I say stretch, when I go to work on the bike every day, I was so thankful for my rest days, because every time I went out for a training ride and I had intervals, I would get so nervous for my training days because I was being so stretched. My coach would continually push me to my limit. And I felt like at work, I'm being pushed, but not like I was in cycling. And so I had this open opportunity to just want more. I wasn't necessarily feeling that I had this tremendous goal on top of me at work. I'd conquer out the goals that came monthly or every 6 months or on an annual basis, but I do those and come home and go out for a ride. And so I felt like, gosh, I really need to set this monstrous goal again. And I tell you what, there was nothing harder that I've done in life than risk going back for a 3rd gold medal. At the time, a lot of people asked me, what are you thinking? You think that you're going to come back and win a 3rd one, and you're going to sacrifice possibly everyone knowing that you went off on top. You left the sport on top, which everyone wants to do. And during the time, I was in a fog. I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter. I just love the sport. And now I think about it, and I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I brought home gold.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm telling you, when someone asks me, do you have a favorite Olympic Games or a favorite medal? It's not a favorite. Every one of my 4 journeys in the Olympic Games were different. But Rio was absolutely the hardest journey.
Was it?
Absolutely.
Wow. This is great. This is great stuff. It's Scott Van Pelt, the sportscaster for ESPN, who famously said the hardest thing in sports is to stick the landing, right? to leave at the right time. And yeah. It sounds like you struggled with that idea. So just as a follow-up, how as an athlete performing at the highest level can you determine when the right time is to walk away?
Well, it's really cool because I wouldn't have been able to answer this correctly until now. And first of all, I think people make decisions based off of age and what they think is happening to their physical abilities, which is untrue.
Right.
The decline in your physical ability is actually a lot less than people think. But I'm telling you, what declines first is your head.
Really?
If you can't go out and you can't suffer and you can't mentally be strong, then for sure you need to be done.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Makes
complete sense. Yeah.
And now, the beauty of what has happened to me is obviously I came back because I wasn't finished. And I thought I was both times, but I learned I wasn't. And so here I am making a couple comebacks. This time around, I coach a handful of women right now. And typically when I coach people in race, or when I retired both times, I would be doing their training, and then all of a sudden they start racing. And I'm like, oh, I just wish I was out there. Oh, they're so lucky. I'd rather training. I'm like, oh, I want to be doing this training. And this time around, I'm like, I am so glad I'm not doing their training. Oh, I did not want to be at that race. And so I went and watched one of my athletes a couple weeks ago at the velodrome, and it was so wonderful to support someone without feeling that I wanted to be out there. And I would watch her warm up, and I'd be like, oh man, she's gonna have to suffer today. And so I know I'm finished because my mind is different. My mind, when I go out to ride with friends, yeah, I like to get a good workout in, but I don't have any intention. Like if someone said, let's go do an interval, I'd be like, not a chance. Not a chance. Unless, like, if I, had one of my clients here in Boise and she wanted to go out and she wanted me to push her, yeah, absolutely, I'd go out because it was for her.
Right.
But, yeah, other than that, that's why I know, and I'm really at peace with what I've accomplished, and I'm more into riding the dirt now than I am actually the road.
Yeah, and in Boise, Idaho, there's a lot of good dirt. A lot of good dirt. Well, let's just ask the question about mountain bikes, because I think that makes, and even kind of gravel grinding and some of those activities. Often, there's a second act for cyclists in a different discipline. They say they're done. Do you have any interest in racing mountain bike, Leadville, Smoke and Fire, any of these kind of epic mountain bike events?
I definitely would never see myself on a mountain bike circuit going out for these epic events. I think it's too early to say whether or not I'm going to crave just like one or two athletic goals a year. I mean, I really enjoy going out and riding really challenging Grand Fondos just because it's new terrain. It's something that, you have to be pretty fit for. And so I don't ever see myself taking it to the level of being that serious again. If somebody asked me, just like I went out and last year I did a gravel grinder at Rebecca's Private Idaho.
Right.
And that was a great experience, but my husband and I couldn't even finish because, we ran out of tubes. But what I love about Rebecca is Rebecca looks and she smiles and says, gravel grinding, that's what it's all about. It's about the challenge. And I'm like, the challenge? As roadies, we're so used to having a car behind us supporting us with wheels. And I'm like, so I have to get used to these new challenges because these riders who go out and do the gravel grinders and these epic mountain bike races, they're like an Ironman where you have to be ready to not have things working so seamless and having that support. And
yeah,
it's these epic riders, they love the challenge of the obstacles that come in their way. And it's typically not the physical obstacles, it's more like the terrain that really is what defines the course. And so I have fun, and I think it helps you, just loosen up a little bit. It's interesting because I have a lot of friends in Boise who, don't compete, and in recent months they've told me that their whole goal is to just relax me. And so, they'll ask me to go for coffee, and I'm like, I don't have time for coffee. What are you talking about? And they're like, Kristin, you're not a professional. You don't need to. It's okay just to relax. And I'm like, oh, okay. So. Yeah,
just turning down the tempo a little bit. We'll take a short pause here, and I just want to thank everybody who's joining us in the different Zwift media. And we hope that if you're watching, you'll share this out so other people can see all of the awesome stuff that Kristin is doing and telling us about. So what I'm hoping, too, is that more people throw questions in the chat, and I'll bring those to Kristin in real time. Now, I'm struggling right now not to get dropped, because that's the danger of a ride with, is that I've got to somehow stay on the back of this big group. But this is, of course, the highlight of Zwift Women's Week, this opportunity to hang out with you, 3-time gold medalist, Kristin Armstrong. So, as it relates to one of the questions I asked you previously, in the gauntlet, hardest ride ever, we glossed over it very quickly, your answer. But I would love to know why that is your hardest ride ever.
I just talked about the obstacles that dirt and gravel racing and gravel grinders bring you, and Flanders is very similar because you never know the conditions. It could be raining, it could be snowing. There's pave, which is also cobblestones, they call that in Europe, and those are very slick, and there's crashes, and there's bike changes, and it is non-stop epic. And what I love about it, and what makes it so difficult, is it doesn't matter where you are during the race. You could be dropped. The race is never over until it's over.
Yeah.
There was a year where I crashed with several others, and we had to chase back on, and that was one of my best finishes. I ended up second. And when I look back at that race, I'll never forget the position I was about 3/4 into the race. I was way off the back. And so what that taught me in life and also in bike racing is never stop racing until you cross the finish line, because you just never know.
Yeah, it's so true. And as a guy who's spent a lot of time off the back, that's something I probably need to take to heart. Well, that's excellent. This is a big group. We've got a lot of people chiming in. I'll bring you some of these questions in just a moment. But Alex Cornwell from Quincy, Mass. asks you to kind of go back in time. He's asking about your World Time Trial Championship. And he wants to know what you had for breakfast.
Oh, that's easy. I have the same breakfast every time I race a time trial.
Okay, so now everybody's feverishly looking for a pencil to write this down. Kristin Armstrong's breakfast, the secret to her success is?
It is. It's oatmeal, but it's old-fashioned oatmeal. And I typically take 2 egg whites, and I whisk it in with half water and half milk. You can use anything you want, but half water, half milk, 2 egg whites. And then after it's finished, I top it with some sort of nut. It could be walnut or almond. And then I use banana. I cut up a banana on it, and then I use honey as my sweetener. And that is my go-to gold medal oatmeal. That is no question. It doesn't matter what time trial it is. It's always the same.
And are you comfortable disclosing how long before the event you take in your gold medal oatmeal?
Yeah, and one of the reasons why it's oatmeal is because it's slow burning. And so it keeps me full, well, even though I'm still nervous. And so I basically consume that 3 hours before.
3 hours before.
And a lot of times what happens is I get nervous when I eat 3 hours before because I might get hungry again. I want to top it off. So with oatmeal, I find that it lasts in my system longer than anything else. And so I'm still feeling topped off by the time I go off for a time trial. And so before a time trial, about 15 or 20 minutes before, I'll take in about 100 calories of, a gel or whatever is there at the moment. But, I'll take in another 100 to 200 calories, within 30 minutes of going off.
Oh, that is excellent. So, are there any foods that you specifically avoid?
I love peanut butter and I love almond butter, but before a race, I feel like if I eat that, I continue to taste it during my race, and that's just not a pleasant feeling. So I think that everyone, feels and can do and I would say absorb different foods, differently. And I think my biggest piece of advice is don't change what I would call the norm. So if you never eat pasta, just because your favorite rider eats pasta the night before a big road race doesn't mean that your body's gonna actually be okay with this if you never eat pasta. And so what I always tell people is you have to consume what you normally consume because your body is efficient at breaking it down and it works for you. You just have to make sure that depending on the demands that you have on you, that you're filling yourself enough, because the last thing you want to do is all the sacrifice you put into your family, your friends, all the sacrifice that you do when you're out training, you have to control your controllables. So if you go out to a race and you finish a race and you got dropped and you're like, oh, dude, I bonked. That was the worst ever. What'd you eat? Oh, a gel. You ate a gel in a 3-hour race. I don't even feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for you. Did you drink? Oh, I had like a half a bottle. Maybe you should focus less on your physical training and more on your nutrition. So these are things that you are in control of. And so you have to feel yourself. The time to restrict if you're trying to lose weight is not during the race season. It's in the off season.
Yeah. No one cares about my training, but our mutual friend, Laura Abruzzi, was my first coach. And she taught me a ton of great stuff, gave me great workouts, but there's nothing that was as valuable as what she taught me about nutrition before and during events. And everything that she's told me is what you just echoed, down to the foods. And they're critical. I mean, seriously, I would pay what I paid for 2 years of training just to know what you just shared. So that is excellent. Okay, so Vera Lackmaker in the Facebook Live asked this question. Well, she asked a question, but I want to get to it in an interesting way. Was it 2012 that the Exergy Tour came to Idaho? Is it 2012? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And that was a big heralded event. Race Tracker was here. A lot of big interest behind it. Exergy certainly pushing the women's tour. Wish they could have stuck with it. It was such a great event. But you had, for the first time, the opportunity to perform on your home soil. And the prelude did not go as planned. Up by the depot, maybe you can tell what happened early on in the prelude.
Yeah, this was actually the last race prior to the Olympic selection. So the Olympic selection was 3 weeks out.
Oh.
And it was the last time that all of us Americans were going to be going head-to-head against one another. So I looked at it as the last time we are on stage.
Yeah.
And so we opened up with a prologue, and the crowds were phenomenal.
Oh, my.
Boise definitely has always stood behind me, but they've also stood behind world-class bike racing. I mean, we used to host, and where I got my start was at what was originally the Orvida Women's Challenge, and then it turned into the HP Women's Challenge.
Yeah.
And so for Exergy to come in, sponsor 2.1 women's stage race in Boise, Idaho was such a great opportunity. So we start off, and I just want to have the best race ever. And I had ridden that prologue almost probably at the end of every one of my rides.
Really?
I would always finish off, and I would have everything all down pat. And the one part where I crashed, it was interesting. So in Idaho, when it gets cold and there's snow, what happens is it creates these ripples in the road where cars stop at the stoplights. And so there's like these little indentations where cars sit in the cement, in the concrete.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we had to do the 180-degree turn, I came out, and it wasn't quite 180. You kind of came out up this at speed to set it up. We're going around the 180, and when we were coming at speed to cross it, to start setting up that corner, it wasn't that I put on my brakes. It wasn't that I clipped the pedal. It was basically that I hit one of those waves, and it skipped my wheel and basically knocked me flat on my shoulder, where I ended up breaking my collarbone.
You did. You broke your collarbone, right?
Yes, and I didn't realize that in warm-up, Clara Hughes actually crashed at the same spot.
Oh.
And so nobody really talked about it or said anything about this, but it was there.
Right.
And so my collarbone break was a clean break all the way through. And so that night, the next morning, I went into surgery and had it pinned, which...
And who's your shoulder guy? Who was your shoulder guy? I want to see if we have your shoulder... Who?
Dr. Jim Johnson.
Oh, okay.
And
I was hoping we were shoulder twins. Never mind.
Well, it was funny. After that experience, Dr. Johnson, he got many, many requests from athletes who broke their collarbone asking, hey, can you do my collarbone because you got Kristin back on the bike really fast. I want to be back too. And so we both know that for me to get back on my bike so quickly, there was definitely risks involved.
Yeah.
I was taking a risk, but there's nothing better, nothing quicker than having your collarbone set back in place, because the hard part of a collarbone break is when you have to have it heal naturally. And I was lucky enough to actually have a break where it would be okay to have that pin stabilize it. So that created a lot less pain.
Right. Oh my goodness. I hate to break this to you, but you have just been dropped by the group.
I know, because you're talking to me too much. Just kidding.
I apologize. You have just been dropped.
Now. I see Kate's little halo.
All right. Hey, everybody, wait up for Kristin.
No, I got it.
All right.
Here we go.
Yeah, if you want, I'll come back and get you. I'll come back. Just totally kidding.
Here I go.
Yes.
I'm trying not to look at the screen. I'm trying to look at you.
Well, so that leads perfectly into Vera's question. And she wants to know what strategies you employ, maybe personal decisions that you make in the process to heal yourself from injury faster. And this collarbone certainly is not your only injury. Like most cyclists, you have as long a list as you have results, probably. But yeah, so what are some good strategies you've used to recover from injury?
Well, it gets easier the more you get injured. Because what happens is, if you've had the fortunate luck to not be injured and out for a long time other than having a little cold,
yeah,
you know how stressful it is to take 3 days off. Well, what happens is when you have an injury where you're required to take several months off, you realize when you come back, though during the time you're about as stressed as anyone could be, but when you come back and you realize that within 6 weeks, you're pretty much back to where you were. And you're like, how did this happen? I should have enjoyed this time off and not stressed the whole time. And so now that's why I always tell people that when you're injured and you're out, I always tell athletes, mark my words, this is a blessing. Because what you're going to learn is that taking time off is not a bad thing. It's actually a positive thing. You learn that a day here or there is not going to kill you. And you're going to be more well rested because you trust rest more. And so, but during my injury, what I focus on is, I think, as endurance athletes, we tend to do what we do best, which is we love to go exercise. We love to go ride and enjoy the nature. And what we aren't so great at is we're not very flexible. We're not super strong in our core. And, our upper body is after Rio, you asked me to do 10 push-ups and I'd fall on the ground. And so I always took this time and really focused on everything I could do.
Right.
And so if you do that, what you realize is when you can't ride a bike and you're focusing on all your weaknesses off the bike, you realize really quickly how many weaknesses you have. And I think in the end, for example, one of my weaknesses is that when I get hip pain, it's all because my glute med turns off. And when your glute med turns off, then you start compensating everywhere. And so during some of my times of injury, I would be working on this. Well, until I figured this out and I was injured, I never knew what was causing my hip pain. The same thing with you go out for a ride. And yeah, we all are pretty strong in our core for about an hour and a half. 2 or 3 hours. What happens is your transverse abs turn off and you go from looking like a good posture to a slack posture, and now you're carrying a whole load in your quadratus femorum. And you start having these back spasms and you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on, I'm getting old. It's all because your abs they're not firing. And so all these things, we think that a 4-hour ride is good enough for the day. Well, what's even better is if you go out for a 2-hour ride and you actually work on some of these weaknesses, because in the end, you're going to be much stronger.
That is really cool, and that's super helpful. And as we were talking, lots of chatter in the ride group here, basically echoing, patience. That's which is what you said as well. You have to be patient. Rest is a good thing. It's important, and you may only learn that lesson if you have an injury and you have to rest. Yeah, that's a really good point. So again, thank you, Vera, for submitting that question. If any of you are joining us and watching, submit your questions to 3-time gold medalist Kristin Armstrong. This is part of Zwift Women's Week. This is the highlight ride, honestly. Special spin, most decorated U.S. cyclist ever. So let me kind of go back to that. So when you hear 3-time Olympic gold medalist, how much of that do you accept with a little bravado and say, yeah, but how much of you is still the 13-year-old Kristin Armstrong who's like, okay, just say it, I'll just wait until you're done talking about me?
Yeah, I tell you what, I am always needing to be reminded, not necessarily for an ego or a confidence builder. It's just that, honestly, just like you said, I go out in town and I go around and people will stop and ask me for a selfie, and I'm just like, what is happening right now? And it still have to pinch myself, and I still don't believe what I have accomplished. I'll be at an event, and it'll be a local event, and it'll be maybe, for a great cause. And I'll be out with the kids, and people will come up to me and say, I can't believe you showed up. And I'm like, why wouldn't I show up? And they're like, well, I would think that we would have had to call your agent and get on your schedule. And I'm like, oh, I don't even like to mention that I have an agent, because it sounds so like you're a VIP or something. And, and so I do like to be that humble person who is really engaged in not only our communities around Boise, but also the state of Idaho. And I go out and I do a lot of speaking engagements outside of the state of Idaho. And it's just amazing how respectful people are about what I have accomplished. But to be honest with you, my favorite message to people is I was never told that I was going to be a champion by any coach in high school, by any coach in college. In fact, when I went into labs to get tested, I never tested well. And what I always tell people is that your drive and determination and what you believe in your mind is so much stronger, because those people who have the physical ability that are off the charts, and this is my VO2 and this is my this and this, at the end of the day, if they're mentally weak and they're not driven, like many of us, then they're not going to make it anyway. So you can't let numbers always just dictate what your destiny is.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point, because cycling itself has become more and more driven by numbers, right? The old timers will tell you, no, we used to just go out and ride, and if you weren't throwing up, ride harder, right? I mean, those old kind of standard ways of looking at things, but we're so number driven now. We've got to know our watts, we've got to understand our TSS for the ride, keep our heart rate within zones for certain periods of time. So how do you... So what you've just told us, which I think is incredibly valuable, is don't fixate on your numbers. Your numbers don't determine who you are as an athlete as much as your heart. So how do we interact with both things? How do we interact with the idea of numbers and having these metrics that we can track, but also focusing on, I guess the internal confidence that you described?
So I train with a power meter. It keeps me accountable, especially when I'm training on my own. But I continue to push those numbers to higher and higher limits. But I'll tell everyone on this ride a secret.
Okay.
A secret about Rio that not many people know. I promise. Well, I'm guessing that I was probably the only rider in the time trial that rode without a power meter.
Really?
So here's my decision.
I love it. Hit us with it.
So the Rio time trial course had over 20% climbs. So I had a decision whether I could light my bike up by half a pound or carry my power meter. And so I made that decision to take my power meter off, because I know what it feels like to hurt, and on any given day, I want to give everything I have. And you know, it's just like heart rate. You can't let power be a limiter. You can let it be a training tool, but the minute you see a number you've never seen before, because you're at the best in top event every 4 years, there's nothing worse than to think that you go back and say, oh, you know, I saw this number, I've never seen it before, so I backed off. There's no backing off in time trial.
No.
They call it the ways to truth for a reason. And you need to learn to dig so deep that you don't even know what your limits are. Because when people tell you, I gave everything I had, and I go, well, how do you know you gave it everything you had? They go, oh, I just know. And I go, have you ever fallen off the bike? No. I said, then how do you know your limits? How do you know? And so I just give it everything I have on every portion of the course. And I never take the course as a whole. I break it up, and I get to that point, and every time I get to a new point, I go for it again. And so, just so you know, I think it's interesting that, I didn't ride with a power meter, and that was just a decision I made, and everything I did was off the field.
Wow, and if you train enough at power, you should understand how it feels. A friend of yours, Sam Johnson, former Continental Pro for Team Exergy, says that power data helps you describe the way you feel, not the other way around. Right? So it's good to understand, okay, what I'm feeling is this.
Yes.
But people use it as a limiter. Oh, I can't go over my FTP today.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. We've got some great questions in the group. I want to make sure that we get in there. Now, a couple of different people ask about some kind of hydration routine. Now, some of these folks, and I won't pick on them individually except for you, Toby Bingham, are asking for specific product names. But I think that the strategy is as important as the product, because sometimes we just hear, oh, you've got this? Okay, I want that. I'll put that on there, and suddenly I'll have, Kristin Armstrong performance. But I think it's the strategy that's maybe the most important part. So maybe this is a two-sided question then. Hydration strategies or hydration mistakes, maybe both?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think that a lot of people tend to, I hydrate on the bike in order to get and to refuel my electrolytes. In the past, when I was a newer rider, I would hydrate a lot, and I would count that as my fuel. So what would happen is I would need to ensure that I had a drink that had plenty of calories, of course, plenty of sugar, and that was the wrong method. I mean, my stomach would be bloated, I couldn't absorb it, and I would wonder what was wrong with me. And so what I did was I changed my method to making sure that I was very conscious about eating on the bike, because that had to be my number one fuel source, whereas I took hydration as what I would consider my number one hydration but electrolyte replacement. Right. And so I stopped using hydration as my number one form of fuel. So it didn't really matter the caloric content. What mattered most in my hydration was that I had very low amount of sugar, because I couldn't absorb that. And then also I needed to make sure I had electrolytes. And the other thing that helped me a lot is making sure that I had the electrolytes necessary to eliminate or reduce like clamping, and making sure that I was getting the proper minerals so that my body wouldn't begin to shut down, or when you get the goosebumps when you are really dehydrated. And so that's where I focus. I did use the pre-fuel, so sort of we call it kind of the lactate buffer.
Yeah.
And so, that is obviously made by several companies now. It has like the sodium bicarbonate, so basically baking soda. And so I did that as a routine about 30 minutes to an hour before my performances. I'd also drink the preload mix before, if my race ended on a climb, like a road race, I would, if it was like a 20 or 30 minute climb, like we have, a handful of those in America, then I would actually drink that as well. The number one thing with anything, whether you're trying to hydrate properly or you're trying to, use gels with, that might have some caffeine content in there. The number one thing is it always goes back to making sure you fuel yourself, because if you put any of this stuff in your body on an empty stomach, it's going to go and it's going to pretty much rebel against what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. I would say,
go ahead.
Number one, you have to make sure that you're fueling yourself properly throughout any ride you do.
So I don't want to point this out again, but you are getting dropped. So let me ask the next question, and it's related to this one. This one comes from Justin Wagner, and the question is, have you ever had anybody that you've ridden with be under the misguided information, or say on a ride, well, I'm not eating anything because I'm trying to lose weight? Have you ever I have a lot of people that are on special diets, or they're not eating because, well, sometimes they don't say they're trying to lose weight, but I can read between the lines. Right.
And I always tell people that they have to worry about what they're doing and not getting wrapped up into other people, because everyone has their different ways, and you have to believe, if you have a coach, you have to believe in them and what they say and the advice they give you. And things that are so obvious, like the one you just said about, I'm not eating because I'm trying to lose weight. At the end of the day, think about it. You're starving your body. So the next time you do eat, it's just going to hold on to that. And so you kind of have to just listen, not respond back to the person, and just internally say, this is sort of unfortunate that they've been misguided.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. The problem with our access to information, of course, is that everyone has access to information, and anyone can produce it. So truth is variable and flexible. Yeah, that makes it really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question and then I'm going to follow it up with a short story, and then I'm going to come back to the question. sorry for giving you the roadmap, but the question is a relatively easy one. Is the Kristin who rolls up to the start line a slightly different personality than the one that we are enjoying on this ride with for Zwift Women's Week?
Yes.
Okay.
It's game face.
So here's the story. As you were preparing for Beijing, we locally here in Boise, Idaho have it's gone by many different names, the Tuesday Nighter, the traditional Tuesday Nighter, the Tuesday Night Throwdown, all of those types of things. It is your standard throwdown ride that most towns have. Everybody shows up. There are usually 2, sometimes 3 groups with different gaps, and they try to catch each other at the finish line. Same course, but unsanctioned, just all the riders showing up to measure their muscles against one another. Well, we rolled up, you preparing for Beijing. You may remember this, you may not. Maybe you do. And I rolled up a couple minutes late. We won't discuss whether that's standard or it was the first time. And as we kind of settle in, you've got your sunglasses on. There is absolutely no curvature to your lips. Flat smile. You look over to me and you say, Haskell, you don't have a larger jersey? so let's discuss, which was brilliant, by the way. And yes, I probably should have worn a larger jersey. But when you talk about just the mindset that you get in when you roll up to that line, and here's the better question. Does that persona have a name? Do you call it something?
It's unfortunate that throughout my years of cycling, I've heard this over and over, and there are many of my competitors that I would say have never really gotten to know me off the bike. And I only say it's unfortunate because they see competitive Kristin who brings her game face to every race she participates in. And if you've ever been a teammate of mine, you realize I do have the ability to have a good laugh after the race is over. I'm quite sarcastic. I have a bright sense of humor. But when I put so much into the sport, it doesn't matter if it's a local Tuesday Nighter, a local time trial, a race regionally. I am there when I show up to race and I pin a number on. It's what I'm there to do.
Yeah.
I'm professional. I'm courteous. I'm not a big talker. I talk and give the younger ones advice if I see big mistakes.
Yeah.
But I'm not one to scream or be obnoxious. But I am quite quiet and have quite a game face. If the team doesn't do well, if we don't get on the podium, then you're probably going to see it on my face.
Now, is that a characteristic of a lot of the professional athletes that you've come to know, teammates?
Yes.
I mean, I guess that it's that mental ability to segregate social time and for all intents and purposes, work time, right? To be able to separate those two. Is that a characteristic you see in other pros as well?
It is. When recently the Rio Games, I know a particular rider who rides on the track, and their coach said, if you don't wipe that bitch face off, you're not racing the finals. And she shared this with me. Then I said to her, you need to turn around and tell them you have 2 choices. You either get the bitch face, or if you get the casual face, you might not get the performance I'm about to go show you. And it's not a bitch face meaning that you're a mean person. It's that it's your expression of, I am so focused right now, I don't even know what face I have on.
Yeah.
And
that I don't care about you.
Serious. Yeah.
I'm focused on my performance. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not here to socialize or be friendly with everybody. I'm here to get a job done, and afterwards, I'll take it off. But, throughout the years, I Boise would know this, the community knows this. I'm a very, very approachable person.
Totally.
I pretty much stop and will talk to anyone that stops me. And in the Peloton, I feel like I've always been looked at as the one that's non-approachable, the one that intimidates people. And to be honest with you, that's not what I'm proud of. But I can't see myself being any different way when I'm trying to actually do the best I can for myself and the team.
Yeah, I would offer that you don't need to apologize for that at all. And if there's any indication that I suggest that you should, no. In fact, that story reminds me that you have a good sense of humor. You know, we're rolling up to do this big event, and as is, you know, most guys and gals choose and stay in a sport not because they love every aspect of it, but they develop friends in that sport who know what they know. And like most sports, they more than anything are a vehicle to make fun of your friends, right? I mean, that's what sports have become. Golf, bowling, it's a vehicle to make fun of your friends. But I think that that's really important, that people have to be able to separate this idea of competitiveness and socialization, because some people come up to the line not ready to race and ready to socialize, and that's not where everybody's at. The socialization comes in the telling of the story after. Oh yeah, do you remember when I covered that move, and then we pulled you back, and then, you know, kind of those things. Yeah, it's unfortunate that she was treated that way, but I love your response, and the people do as well. We got hearts and thumbs up going all over the place. So again, if you're joining us, we are just about to finish up the big finish here, the ride with Kristin Armstrong, the crown jewel of Zwift Women's Week, 3-time gold medalist. Good, I got to all the big questions that I wanted to get to, and I guess just one more as we kind of finish up here. People are interested in, I guess, following you and connecting you, and I have noticed that you are always on Zwift. You're always here. That is really cool.
Yeah,
what's your Zwift strategy? You're here because you want to be, not because you're being compelled to by some arrangement. I love that.
Well, I feel like I'm joining a Zwift ride. I have great terrain, and then I just love the challenges that Zwift puts in front of me, because I'm not out competing. I'm not putting a number on. And so one of the things I do is, no matter what course, a lot of times I say, I pick you choose, because I always like to be surprised. And when I do that, I pretty much try my best, and I try to go off of the QOMs. I try to look at the sprints. I'm not a sprinter, but it's a challenge, and so it's given me these little efforts throughout my ride. And I just try to set a standard and a baseline, and I try to improve each week or each day that I go back on that same course. I try to improve the segment that I set out to do for that day.
Well, that is, and I think that is music to the Zwifter's ear, because so many of us join, you know, and jump in with rides and do workouts and chase those KOMs for the same reasons. It's just a sweet, compelling world. So people can reach out to you. They can share that they got to ride with you with the hashtag ride with, and then K_Armstrong on Twitter. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay, it's been popping up here. I just haven't been reading it as it has. That's so great. Is there anything that you are championing right now that we should pay closer attention to?
You know, right now I still continue to work with the 20, which is now 2020 team. You know, they have the top junior program in the nation, and I'm coaching, you know, one of the juniors. I am coaching, I would say, a couple other very young up-and-coming riders in the U.S., so I definitely am putting my time back in the sport because I love it so much. I am, you know, continuing to do work in the state of Idaho around childhood obesity. And so I'm just all about being active, setting goals, and bringing what sport brought to me to others and the other younger generation that's behind us.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for everybody for joining us here on Facebook Live. Thanks for all the Team ODZ folks for making sure the wires were connected behind the scenes. Kristin, thanks for hanging out with us. This has been
thank you.
really,
Thanks
really
everyone
cool.
for joining me.
And
I love
thanks
it.
everybody for your questions. We'll see you on the next Ride With. Thanks again, Zwift. This was cool. And of course, Kate Barano. Very cool. We appreciate you.
Well, you can see how much I'm sweating. I don't have any fans on. That's why I'm like, I look like I just did a threshold workout or something. Oh. Wow. Have they started already? Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah.